Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Vieira. For those of you who know me, it's nice to be talking with you again. And for those of you who don't, it's nice to be meeting you for this first time. Thank you for taking some time to get to know us and to join us live today, or later on if you're watching a recorded version of this session. For those of you watching live, please feel free to submit questions to the Q&A. It's down at the bottom of your screen. And we will respond to as many of those as we can during the session. We're very happy that you're choosing to engage with us in this setting and hope that you're able to get the information that you're looking for without needing to physically be down on campus in Bristol. With that, I'm going to introduce you to our two panelists, Julia Wyman and Reed Porter. Julia is the director of the Marine Affairs Institute and the director of the Rhode Island Sea Grant Legal Program, both housed at RWU Law. She also serves as adjunct faculty member, where she teaches courses related to ocean and coastal law and policy, including climate change law, policy, including climate change law and policy, ocean management law and policy, and environmental justice. She also has extensive state and national ocean and coastal law and policy experience, most recently serving as Ocean and Environmental Counsel for Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Prior to that, she served as the staff attorney at the Marine Affairs Institute and the policy analyst for the Coastal States Organization in Washington, D.C., an organization that represents interests of the governors of the 35 coastal states, commonwealths, and territories. Reed Porter is our senior staff attorney with the Marine Affairs Institute at Roger Williams and the Rhode Island Sea Grant Legal Program. Reed directs the Sea Grant Law Fellow Program, an experiential education program in which Roger Williams students conduct legal research on behalf of outside organizations. He's worked in and published widely on topics in environmental and natural resources topics, including international and domestic fisheries and aquaculture, compliance and enforcement, and marine protected area governance. From 2006 to 2016, he was a senior staff attorney and director of the Invasive Species Program at the Environmental Law Institute, a nonpartisan research and educational organization based in DC. With that, I am going to turn it over to Julia.
Great, thanks, Kate.
You're welcome.
So hi, everybody. We're really excited to be here with you today. We wish that we were welcoming you in our office and hope that we'll be welcoming you in our office quite soon. But we really want to get to the heart of any questions that you guys have about marine affairs. I know a lot of you have probably chosen Roger Williams as a potential school because of your interest in marine affairs. So to that end, if you have questions, feel free to start putting them in the Q&A, and we can jump to as many questions as you guys would like. But Reed and I have prepared a little, sort of 101 on what we are, which is exactly what you would see if you came to one of our open houses in a different time period. So we are the Marine Affairs Institute. We're located at Roger Williams Law School, but we are a true partnership between the law school, the University of Rhode Island, and Rhode Island Sea Grant. And so what that means for you guys as students is that you get access to two universities, you get access to the faculty and the staff at two universities, and you also get access to alumni at both universities who are off doing really, really great things in marine affairs. Some of you may be familiar with the Sea Grant programs. So the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, has a Sea Grant program in every coastal state. And so when we say coastal, we mean oceans and we mean Great Lakes. So every coastal state has a Sea Grant program, but not very many programs have a dedicated legal program. So we're actually one of only 4 dedicated legal programs, and we're the only one that's in the Northeast. And what that means for you guys as students or potential students is that any sort of question of law or policy that comes to a Sea Grant constituent in a coastal state in New England, so not just Rhode Island, but also Maine, Connecticut, all throughout New England, comes to us. And what we do with those questions is primarily put our students to work on them. And so we'll get into a little bit of that more. Through our partnership with the University of Rhode Island, we have a joint degree program, and many of you may be really interested in the joint degree program. So with the joint degree program, you get your JD here at the law school, and then you get your Master of Marine Affairs over at the University of Rhode Island. That to add that additional degree onto your time here at the law school, it only adds 1 semester. So what that looks like in terms of a time frame is during your 2nd year of law school, you would apply for the Master of Marine Affairs program over at URI. You would find out if you're accepted, and then your 3rd year of law school, you take classes both at the law school and at the University of Rhode Island. You'd graduate on time with all of your classmates at the law school. That summer, you'd study for and take the bar. And then a semester following your law school, that fall semester, you'd be a full-time student over at URI and graduate from URI in December. So what is sort of marine affairs? We do all things related to oceans and coasts in our department. So that means we do all courses related to Admiralty and maritime law. So some of those courses might be Admiralty, maritime practice and procedure, maritime shipping, piracy, and then also all courses related to natural resources. So the things that you may think of like environmental law, ocean and coastal law and policy, climate change law and policy, land use planning. All of those courses are the courses that we have at the Marine Affairs Institute, and I think is a distinguishing factor as you're sort of looking at what different schools offer for courses. The next big highlight, I'll say, and then hand this over to Reed to talk a little bit about the Law Fellow program, is what we offer in terms of experiential education. So you've probably heard that at Roger Williams, we really do put an emphasis on experiential education, get you out into the world and practicing. So some of the ways that you can do that is through our externship, our clinical externship programs. We have an environmental and land use externship program that many of our marine affairs students decide to take part in. And you can do that in the spring of either your 2nd or 3rd year. And then we also have a couple of placements in our corporate counsel externship program. So some of our students that are more interested in in-house things like in shipping and insurance go to our corporate counsel for a placement. And you can do one of those externships either in the fall or in the spring. And then the next big experiential opportunity that we have is the Sea Grant Law Fellow program. And I'm gonna hand it over to Reed to talk to you guys a little bit about that. And then we'll start to really take your questions because we wanna really cover what you'd like to cover.
Yeah. Hi guys, my name is Reed Porter, as you just heard. So let me jump right in. So I lead at the Marine Affairs Institute, the program called the Sea Grant Law Fellow Program. And I know that many students, when you're looking at where do you want to go to law school, you're not as excited necessarily about sitting in a class, getting grilled by a professor. You're excited about getting out into the community and starting to make a difference, starting to put your developing legal skills to work on a real world problem. And that's what we let you do through the Sea Grant Law Fellow program. So the way this works is students, I hire students every semester, and that's 3 semesters a year. So fall, summer, and fall, spring, and summer semesters. And I hire students every term to work on a single real world issue, a project that's come to us from the community. So it can come to us from fishing groups. It could come to us from a nonprofit organization, a local government, a state agency. We're a combination of lots of different groups that have come to us to say, we have a problem, we need to understand it better, can you help? And so what we do through the Law Fellow program is do legal research and legal analysis to help stakeholders, is what we call them, our partners. We want to help them make better informed decisions so that they know what is the legal consequences of a decision before we make that decision, right? We never want to find things out after the fact that are unpleasant, right? Nobody wants a lawsuit when they thought they were doing something right. So we help people avoid problems, which is a really satisfying way to work. And for a lot of students, and especially students who aren't totally sold on being litigators, this can be a really satisfying way to get experience thinking about policy work, thinking about how does the law work now and how could it work differently? Are there areas where the law is uncertain, or where there's some gray areas that an agency could step in and clarify for the community? So there's a lot of good real world meaty issues that come to us, and unlike in sort of a clinic, there's not an answer that I know. If I knew an answer when somebody called me on the phone, I would just tell them, right? So these are real problems that students work on. So that's why I think it's a fun program for me to work on. The students get an additional benefit because unlike a lot of other experiential programs, students can actually get paid to participate in this. We are doing real work for real partners, and sometimes getting a salary should be part of your practice, right? That's what we're shooting for. So students do like that. You can also get credit for it. So that can also be a good solution in certain cases. And in some cases, you can check off some of your graduation requirements. If it's a project that requires a longer sort of paper, that could meet a graduation writing requirement. So there's a lot of ins and outs in terms of how you can make the program work for you. It's very flexible. And it's also something that looks great on a resume, and it can help build your skills so you can start to develop those experiences that can put you in good stead when you get towards graduation. And I guess the one thing that I should say as well, if you're starting in the fall, which we hope you are, you're not eligible until you finish your first year. So it's really something to look forward to rather than something to get your teeth into in that first semester. We do need you to learn something before you start, so that you're able to really get a good background before you sink your teeth into these problems. In the meantime, though, we try to do a set of experiences and talks and opportunities for folks to engage with marine affairs during that 1L year. So we know that you're excited to get into marine affairs, and we want to help you nurture that interest, even though you're doing classes on other topics.
Okay, well, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Julia. I'm sorry.
I was just going to start in with a question, but if you want to read it, that's great too.
I was going to say, sure. We do have one question that has come in so far. It's kind of a two-part question, so let's take the first one first. Is it feasible to complete the joint program and then also participate in the Sea Grant Law Fellow program? I would imagine that's kind of a common question. Right?
Yeah, and I'll start with the sort of big resounding yes. We have designed it so that you can do that. And there's many, many ways you can do that. So the joint degree program you don't really participate in until you are a 3L. So it's that third year of your law school that you're going to be doing classes in both locations. But as Reed just said, you're eligible to become a law fellow starting the summer after your 1L year. So there's that sort of year and a half that you could be a law fellow before doing the joint degree program. And then potentially you could even be a law fellow during the joint degree program. I'll let Reed speak a little bit more to sort of how that balancing works.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities in marine affairs that it's almost impossible for one student to do all of them, right? And so we always encourage people to, think about what you're excited about doing and to focus on those, right? However, most of the folks that do that joint degree program have done or will do the Sea Grant Law Fellow program as well. Those two programs work really well together. And in a lot of cases, even if you're in the joint degree program as a 3L, if you're super excited about marine affairs, doing that law fellow program can be a nice addition even to that. The credit load doesn't super change when you pick up the joint degree program. Your travel time from campus to campus might change. And so there's sort of more time and effort that goes into learning a second campus in that time, but it is still definitely feasible to do both together. A lot of those students, though, often they're applying to me the summer after their 1L year, and they're just raring to get cracking, get some experience under their belt. So I should add also, unlike a lot of sort of course experiential education projects, like an environmental externship, for example, Law Fellow program can be done more than one time. You don't have to worry about scheduling it only one time. People, maybe they'll apply in the summer, and then in the fall, they've got a really heavy credit load, and they come back in the spring and they say, oh, I have a lighter load this semester, I'd like to do another project. And that's totally feasible to do.
Yeah, and just to jump in on that, even though this is not part of the original question, students are able to also do the joint degree program and an externship. And that's something that often comes up after a student has been at the law school for a good part of their 1L year, because they hear sort of a lot of wonderful things about the externship program. And it definitely is possible to do an externship in the joint degree program, but what we advise is doing that externship during your 2L year, during the spring of your 2L year, as opposed to waiting till your 3L year, because during the 3L year, you are juggling 2 different campuses, and to add in another location for your externship, it's a lot of driving. If nothing else, it's just a lot of driving. So typically what happens is when marine affairs students come to us that first year, even though we're not working with you necessarily in the classroom, you're meeting with me, you're meeting with Reed, you're talking to us about sort of what your plans are, what your objectives are, and we help you map out what courses to take when.
As the follow-up, to just complete the same student's question, to complete the joint degree program, and do most students, or do many, complete the joint degree and follow it up with an LLM and Admiralty, or would you consider that overkill?
Yeah, we actually don't have a lot of students that have gone on to get an LLM and Admiralty. And the reason I think that most of our students haven't gone on to do that is because most of the classes that you would take in an LLM are available to you through our regular JD program. So a lot of times people go to get an LLM to add on to their JD experience because they haven't been able to take those courses and to really focus on that area during their time in law school. But fortunately for you guys, if you are interested in Admiralty, we have wonderful courses. And so by the time you graduate, most of our students who are really interested in Admiralty go straight on to pretty good jobs right after graduating. So we don't see a lot of students do the LLM. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think we have any students that have done the joint degree and then additionally done an LLM. And really that's because most of our students end up employed pretty soon after graduation, and they're pretty happy with their jobs.
Following that up, I know that we have a couple questions here, but I think it does make sense to talk a little bit about what sort of careers that they might be finding jobs in. I think it might be a good sounding board for that.
Sure. So early on in today's session, I mentioned that one of the benefits of doing the joint degree is that you get sort of access to faculty and staff and then alums at both the University of Rhode Island and Roger Williams. And that means what you have in terms of an alumni base is like very large. So even though we're sort of a younger law school, especially when you pair it with the Marine Affairs program at URI, there are so many folks in the marine affairs world that have a connection to Roger Williams. And so we'll just, I think, Reed, start naming some of the things that some of our students have gone on to do. And I'll start, maybe we'll kind of go back and forth with this one. So one of our graduates is the deputy director at NOAA's Office of General Counsel, their section on oceans and coasts. And she has been there pretty much since she graduated law school. She did the joint degree program, and then she got a presidential management fellowship, which is a very prestigious fellowship. It's a 2-year fellowship with guaranteed government employment at the end of it. And she ended up in a rotation at the Office of General Counsel, their section on oceans and coasts, which she had actually interned there during her time at Roger Williams. We have a dedicated internship, summer internship there. She had taken that up during her time at Roger Williams, and now she's deputy director. So that's one example.
Yeah, I know we have a alum at Massport, and she, after graduation, worked down in DC at the Department of Transportation in the Maritime Administration before recently returning up to New England. And now she's working in Boston with Massport, which basically runs the airport and the Port of Boston.
Yep. And for those of you who are really interested in policy and politics, one of our former joint degree students did a Knaus Fellowship, which is another prestigious fellowship down in DC, where you either work for a year in the legislative branch or the executive branch of the government, and she was in the legislative branch. And now she's chief counsel in the House Committee of Natural Resources. So she stayed on there after her graduation.
Yeah, there's a couple of graduates that we had just last year, I think, that are now working on issues related to wind turbines. They're at a law firm here in Rhode Island, and they're working on some of the issues related to how wind turbine and wind farms are set up to work with fishing vessels, so that basically you can drive a fishing boat between those turbines. So that's a pretty exciting thing for a first-year lawyer to be working on.
Yeah, and then I'll round it out with, like, don't forget the litigators. If you are interested in litigation, we have lots of alums that are in environmental litigation or admiralty litigation. So one of the big areas to practice in admiralty is New York, and we have quite a few alums that range from junior associates all the way up to partners in those maritime firms. And I think there's a post that is on the law school site sort of about all of them and what they've done, the wonderful things that they've done.
Thank you. Back to some of the student questions here. Is there a connection between Marine Affairs and the Breedy Sailing Center, which for those of you that don't know, that's right on campus. It's actually my background here on my Zoom. Also, is there anything at the Institute you'd recommend for someone interested in getting a taste of marine affairs, but who has no prior experience?
Yeah, so we love to host our barbecues there. We definitely try to use the Sailing Center anytime we can to host meetings and events. All students are, once you come to Roger Williams, are eligible to take out kayaks from the Sailing Center, so not just Marine Affairs-y students. And I believe you can take sailing lessons. I think less law students do it just because it ends up being a time management thing, but you could take sailing lessons and be able to take out some of those boats that are right behind Kate sometimes. And then in terms of getting ready, if you don't have any exposure, so there's lots of things that you could do in terms of volunteering, I would think, especially between now and the start of the fall. So some of those could be things like volunteering at a coastal cleanup with, depending on if you're in Rhode Island or if you're in another state, lots of different local organizations help lead coastal cleanups. That may not be possible in the near term, but there's probably lots of opportunities to engage online with some of those organizations that may need assistance. And then just in terms of getting up to speed on issues, I feel like there's a lot of different listservs and news organizations that you could you could start to really read up on. And we're happy to make some of those available sort of to Kate and maybe attach them to this recording so that you guys could sort of dive into educating yourself a little bit on marine affairs. I'll give one more plug and then hand it off to Reed for his suggestions on this, but we also have on our website, we do have archives of previous events. So every other year we host a very large marine affairs symposium on different topics. And so you could go and watch some of the old symposiums and learn a little bit about things related to municipal liability and climate change. And that could be a nice way to sort of get your feet a little bit wet in some of the issues. Reed, do you have some suggestions too?
Yeah. I was thinking more in terms of once you get to campus, which hopefully you'll be joining us, there are, a lot of ways to get involved in marine affairs once you're on campus, even if you're a sort of a marine affairs curious student and not sort of a lifer. And those are some of our favorite students, is people who come and they get the bug and they just can't stop. We have a student right now who came from a sort of a Midwestern state, had no prior experience with the ocean or related issues, and we've really got him hooked. Now he's going to be working at Louisiana Sea Grant this summer with a great summer internship. So there are definitely ways to dip your toes in and see if you like it, and if you do, then the sky's the limit. So some of those things I mentioned, we have events during the course of the semester where you can come and you can see what the prior semester's Sea Grant Law Fellows were working on, and get exposed to some of those legal issues that are coming up, and those are always really timely kinds of issues. You can also get engaged with the Environmental Law Society, the Maritime Law Society, and other student groups that are sort of always running meetings, career panels, bringing in speakers to try to help students get that sort of not in class exposure to marine affairs issues. So that's always really good. And then the students and the Institute, we're always we have a very open door kind of policy. We're almost, well, during typical times, we have an open door policy. Students always drop in with us, and we're always available to answer questions when we're in the office. And so we do get a lot of folks coming in and asking, what do you think we should do? I'm interested in this. What should I take in terms of classes? And so we do a lot of counseling for that. And I will say my plug on that one is take Ocean and Coastal Law your second semester. Julie and I co-teach that class, and that's a really great introduction to all the sort of different issues across the ocean and coastal law world. So that's a great chance to sort of dip your toes and see where in that world you're really interested.
Thank you. Another question we have submitted, the student calls it a more philosophical question. What does success look like for a student working with the Institute? What are some of the core values that you seek to instill in students that get through your programs?
I think this is a great question, and I don't think we've actually ever gotten this question, so I really appreciate it. So success for a student that's coming through our Institute could look wildly different from one student to another. So there's no one way to do the Marine Affairs Institute. Some of our students come to us and are very excited about marine affairs, want to take every single marine affairs class that we offer, want to do the Law Fellow program, want to do the joint degree program, want to do an externship, want to like sort of pack in as much as they really possibly can. And then some students come to us and they're more on the range of, I'm sort of interested in it, but I haven't really had any exposure to marine affairs, and they take maybe one class with us and do a Law Fellow project. All of those sort of can be successful students with our program. What we try to instill in all of our students, and this sort of comes from our motto at Sea Grant. So Sea Grant, since it is federally funded, is a non-advocacy organization, and we are a non-advocacy organization. And the motto for Sea Grant is Science Serving America's Coasts. And what we put into that is the law and policy part of science serving America's coasts. And so we try to really make sure that our students are always looking at sort of every aspect of whatever they're researching for us in a very neutral academic tone, right? So you want to figure out, when you look at a problem, you don't want to just see it from your perspective or your client's perspective. You want to see it from all perspectives and come to a solution that really is the best for the potential client, the potential environment, sort of all parties. And so what we really like is to see our students take all of those things into consideration and to think methodically about issues, and also, to open their minds to some of the things that they might not have thought about before they came to law school, right? So one of the classes that I teach is environmental justice. And so it's, looking at some of the things that have happened in the United States with a sort of a lens of what are the communities that are most affected by some of the decisions that we've made with some of our environmental legislation, or perhaps like where the nuclear power plant is placed and what are the ramifications for the communities around it. So just being very open-minded and thinking about all of those aspects of environmental and marine affairs law is, I think, one of the fundamental things that we want our students to walk away with. We also want them to walk away with an understanding of marine affairs and ocean and coastal law and policy. So that's our job, is to teach you that. And we are excited to do it. And we relish in sort of when you first come in and you don't know very much. And then we get really excited when you leave and you know a lot. Reed, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. One is that we don't need everyone that we work with to go into marine affairs, right? Some people come in and they're bitten by another bug, and I think our core value is that students go away, they have the chance to be exposed to everything that interests them, and that exposure allows them to open doors that wouldn't otherwise be open. And I really value that, right? In my law fellow program, we don't require that people want to go into marine affairs. I have students right now whose interest is in human rights and anti-discrimination. And we've got that particular student is working on an environmental justice related issue with looking at tenants' rights after disasters. And that turns out to be something that's very relevant to what's happening in the world today. You wouldn't have necessarily connected marine affairs and COVID virus, but here we are, right? We didn't predict it at the beginning of the semester, certainly, but it turns out that the same act that's used after hurricanes is the act that's used today to provide support for impacted communities. So that's one thing, is that people get a chance to follow their heart. The other is that I think we really, our core value is to promote competence and professionalism, that people are exposed to how a professional meeting might be run, that they're included in terms of how our offices, how do people relate to each other. You're out in the law firm or the agency or the nonprofit community environment, and you're exposed to how those offices run and what it takes to make them tick. So my hope is that when students graduate from Roger Williams, they're sort of practice ready, that they are prepared not just to be a law student, but to be a lawyer in practice, and really to focus on the needs of their clients and how to forward those needs.
Thank you. We have a question about the dual degree. Specifically, could you estimate how many students usually take advantage of that program?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So on average, we have about, I'd say, 2 to 4 students per year that end up doing the joint degree program. We used to have a few more. So it used to probably be about 4 to 6 students per year that would do it. We have had as many in a year as 14. And we've had as few as 1. And it really just depends on what the students' desire is once they reach that 2L year. So we often have a lot of students that that come to us for the joint degree program and then end up deciding that instead of the joint degree program, they're going to do 2 externships or a semester in practice. But on average, I'd say about 2 to 4 students per year.
Could you guys speak a little bit about the extracurricular opportunities you have that are associated with marine affairs?
Sure. So the student groups that Reed mentioned, the Environmental Law Society and the Maritime Law Society, are probably the 2 big student groups that most of the marine affairs students end up participating in. And it's completely student run, and they plan, I'd say, on average 2 to 4 events per semester. Sometimes those events are things like having speakers come to the law school for the students. And sometimes it's things like an organized trip to a port. This semester they had an organized trip to a port that unfortunately didn't get to happen because it was right after spring break. But that will probably happen in the fall. So if you're a student, come fall, we'll probably be taking a trip to the Port of Quonset. And there's opportunities for leadership in both of those groups. So starting your 1L year, you could be a 1L rep in either of those groups. And then starting your 2L year, you could be president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, depends on what group, what the exact roles are. But there's lots of opportunity for student leadership there. And then we have our moot courts. So some of you may have heard of the Admiralty Moot Court, the Judge John Brown. And that happens every year. And last year, our group won the entire competition. So that's a national competition. And we've had quite a bit of success in previous years, either with things like best brief, best oralist, or overall competition winning. There's also the environmental moot court, and that is not run as frequently. That's run based on whether there's student interest in doing the environmental moot court, and that's up at Pace, or down at Pace in New York. Are there other extracurriculars, Reed, that you want to add to that?
I think the only other student group that intersects a lot with our students tends to be the Student Animal Legal Defense Fund. We do have a chapter of that organization on campus, and they've been pretty active in terms of activities and speakers. So there's often a lot of intersection between folks who are interested in environmental or natural resources law and those that are interested in animal law. So that's another opportunity for students here. And I wanted to add that our last year, I used to say that we're the reigning champions, and I believe that it was last weekend, and I don't actually know who won this year, so we might still be, but last year we were the reigning champions of the Admiralty Moot Court competition, as well as the best oralist and the best brief. So we won basically every competition award that they had, and it wasn't probably fair to the other teams, so I'm sure we're also we have to brag about that while we can. So I'm sure that they did great this year. And they're also, we do send 2 teams actually to that every year. So we send a 2L team and a 3L team. So that's an opportunity that a lot of 2Ls don't get to have, is to do that a second time. And it can be really beneficial. It's often really eye-opening when students go to that as a 2L, and they see the standard that is expected out of the other teams, and they come back sort of with their both barrels loaded up for that 3L time. So yeah.
Thank you. I know that we had originally scheduled this for just about 45 minutes, and so I'm wondering if you could give some of our admits maybe a taste of what you see as maybe emerging topics that may be of interest to or related to the Marine Affairs Institute that they potentially could be working on, or could just be questions that you see down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think one of the biggest topics of our time is going to be climate change and sort of the effects that climate change have on our coastal communities. And that can be seen in multiple ways. So that can be seen in sort of infrastructure, what happens to existing infrastructure. It can be seen in things like retreat, what's the time that we're going to have to start moving away from our coasts. It can be seen in terms of health. So as we start to get hotter and hotter in the city of Providence, what's going to happen with all of the buildings that don't have existing air conditioning? What happens to the children who have asthma? It can be seen in terms of our fisheries. So fisheries are starting to migrate, but our management system hasn't really gotten to the place where those migrating fisheries are in the proper places. So sort of lots of different issues come together under the umbrella of what I would consider climate change. And sort of tandem to climate change is just ocean management and coastal management in general. And that's not necessarily a new or emerging issue, but it's sort of the bread and butter of what we do is, how do you manage resources that are, some are finite, some are renewable, but they're incredibly important to the societies that we've built around the country. So most of our big cities are reliant on some form of our coasts, either the oceans or the Great Lakes. And how do you manage those for multiple uses? And that's what sort of got me into the field. It's what keeps me in the field. And it's exciting to see what the next generation of questions will be related to that. And those are the types of topics that I think our students really get to work on.
Thank you. Reed, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would add, so I work a lot with the shellfish industry. For those of you who aren't from Rhode Island, I don't know where you're all from. So you might know this already, but oysters are starting to be a big business all up and down the East Coast and around the country. And that's one of those sort of multiple use topics that Julia was just talking about. We've got an industry that used to be huge. There used to be 40,000 acres of oyster culture in Rhode Island 100 years ago. And now there's a couple hundred. But all of that acreage is now used for other purposes, whether it's for the lovely marina that we have behind Kate, or for other kinds of fishing, or for other types of uses, whether we're putting wind cables or other things like that in the water. Where do we put this emerging use? How can that use interact with other kinds of things that might or might not work well with it? Can we support those small businesses that are a really important part of our coastal economy? Where can they pull their boats out of the water as more and more of our harbors turn into sort of Airbnb places? Is there a role for the working waterfront in our state? And these are issues that I think that are coming up all around the country. So there's corporate issues there. How can local food producers sell to the public? It's not super easy in this state. How can they survive a downturn like the one that we're seeing now? Do they need a new sort of arrangement for insurance, right? There's all of these kinds of issues that are coming up for shellfish, but that's sort of a microcosm of this, the entire economy around the waterfronts and coastal communities. So all of those issues that come up as communities try to struggle through, how do we zone our coast? What uses should we allow there? How can we allow different uses of our submerged environment? What do we do about the fish that are there? All of those issues, they always keep coming back up in different and new ways, and that's what keeps this field so exciting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope that oh, we just had a final question pop up. So I was going to say, we'll wrap up, but we will definitely tackle this one first. If there are or will be any contingencies in the case that we can't get on campus next year, what could you guys tell them anything about that? I'm reading this out loud as I read the question, and I doubt that either Julia or Reed could answer that question. I do know that it is our plan right now that we would be on campus next year, and I don't know if maybe some of your events, or if you know of anything in the fall that maybe you could do virtually to keep your marine students, your marine affairs students engaged, maybe.
Yeah, so you probably know better than I do, Kate, but my only reaction is that we are proceeding as though we are all going to be on campus in the fall. We're really excited to get back there and be there with you. And I think any decision on that will obviously come from much higher up than us. And probably will come from the Department of Health, right? I believe the admissions office will be able to communicate when that time would be known. I think it's expected it would be at some point this semester, but I'll leave that to them. in the event that we were not on campus together, we would certainly have a very robust marine affairs presence online in terms of having webinars and sort of opportunities to engage with speakers and lots of talks in the fall.
And my law fellow program, I know that you wouldn't be eligible for it, but we're running remote this summer, and if we have to, we'll run it remote again in the fall. It's not as good that way because it's more fun to talk to people in person than it is over Zoom. So apologize, you know, that's how we do now. But we keep running pretty much everything we can and giving as much support to the students as we can.
And just to add on, so I know that we're at the end of our time and I have to go teach, but we are available to talk to you, and we'd love to talk to you more if you have questions, or if you're watching this as a video and you weren't able to ask your questions, you can reach out to us. Our contact info is available on the website, and we're happy to either set up a phone call or a Zoom call to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you very, very much for your time. I really appreciate that both of you took a little bit of time to spend with your hopefully future students. And we will see you all soon. To everyone who's watching, thank you for taking some time to watch. We do appreciate that you're continuing to engage with us this way. And if you do have any questions, I know that Julie and Reed would be happy to answer them. And if you can't track them down, you do know how to get in touch with us. So just email us at lawadmissions@rwu.edu, and I'm happy to get you in touch with whoever you need to talk to. Okay, thanks everyone. It was nice to see you again.
Bye guys.
Yes.
Bye.